How did a massage therapist and a high school dropout win a $300 million contract with the Pentagon? Hi, my name is David Packouz, and the movie War Dogs was based on my life. Miles Teller plays me in the film. And let's go back to the beginning, and I'll tell you how it all started. When I was 22 years old, I was in college studying chemistry, had a few side jobs. I was working as a massage therapist. I was selling SD cards on eBay, importing bedsheets from Pakistan and selling it to hospitals and nursing homes. And I bumped into an old friend of mine from high school, a guy named Ephraim Diveroli. He told me that he was currently in the business of doing government contracting, which is bidding on contracts to sell things to the government. And because he was a gun nut and loved guns, he specialized in small arms and munitions. So he asked me what I was doing, and I told him about the SD cards and the bed sheets I was importing. And he said, well, you know, a lot of the stuff you're doing with that can be applied to my business. You have to search for suppliers overseas, you have to arrange logistics, get the licensing, work out financing. You can help me build my business, and I'm looking for a partner. I know that you're a smart guy, a trustworthy guy. We've known each other since we were kids. Why don't you come and work with me? So I told him, well, how much money have you made so far? And he tells me, he's like, I'm gonna tell you, but not because I'm showing off, I just want to inspire you. And he logs into his computer and he shows me his bank account, and he has $1.8 million in cash sitting in his bank account.
Holy shit.
That blew my mind. I mean, I was doing pretty well with my businesses, but I wasn't making millions. So I realized this guy knows what he's talking about. He knows how to make money, and I could learn a lot. So I told him, I'm in, teach me what you know. So he taught me how the whole federal contracting system works, how to identify solicitations, which is what the government posts on their website when they want to buy something, how to identify which ones we qualified for, which ones we could potentially win, which one we should work on, how to estimate the cost of the contract, how much money we could potentially make from the contract. And I started working at it. At first I started doing fuel contracts because he was focusing on munitions, and I wanted to do something different to expand the business. And my first contract was for 40,000 gallons of propane. About 2.5 weeks of work, I made about $8,000. We were splitting the profits 50-50. So my end was $8,000, which wasn't bad for 2.5 weeks of work for a first contract. Then I started working on some other contracts. He started having me help him on some of his guns and ammo contracts. I worked on a small arms contract to supply rare weapons to the Special Forces, because the Special Forces has to train on all the historical weapon systems that might be out in the field where they operate. So I had to source about 130 different rare guns from all the small gun shops in America, things that went back all the way to World War II and the Vietnam War, stuff that wasn't being manufactured anymore. And then we saw this contract. About 8 months into working together, we saw this contract, which was the biggest thing we'd ever seen. It was for all munitions. It wasn't any weapons, just munitions. And it was all Warsaw-packed munitions, so stuff that was made by the former Soviet Union countries. This was ammunition that the United States and the West did not manufacture, so they were looking to supply a massive amount of munitions to the Afghan National Army, who were the allies of the United States at the time. Nobody in the United States manufactured this in any decent quantities, so they had to source it from overseas. We had already delivered some of these types of munitions in much smaller quantities to Iraq. So we technically qualified. We had the past performance or the history to qualify to bid on this contract. If you don't have that past performance, they don't even look at your bid for such a large contract. So I spent a couple months of very hard work calling up every single manufacturer and supplier of Warsaw-packed munitions in the world. A lot of them didn't speak English, so I'd have to use Google Translate. A lot of them weren't using emails, so I'd have to use faxes, and oftentimes their fax lines would go down mid-fax, and I'd have to call them up and make sure they got the fax and then send it again. And it was a huge pain in the ass to get those quotes, but we stuck at it, worked our asses off, and got a quote from pretty much everyone in the entire industry that we could find. We submitted it to the government. Then we didn't hear anything for a few months, and we thought we definitely lost. But then we got a call around 3 months later that they wanted to do an audit on our company. And we realized, well, they only do audits on your company if they're actually considering giving you the contract. And an audit is a little investigation to make sure that they feel comfortable that your company can handle this kind of contract. So they gave us a few different audits. One was financial, one was logistical, sources audits, and we worked really hard to pass those audits. Eventually, we even had the contracting officers, the people from the government who were in charge of awarding the contracts, fly down to our office to do an investigation of our office. We didn't actually have an office, so we quickly rented one and filled it with furniture and hired some employees off Craigslist so that it would look like we were a big legitimate company that could handle such a large contract. We hired an accountant to create a whole accounting system which they required, which we didn't have, and we impressed the government contracting officers, and they decided to award us the contract. So after they finished the audits, we didn't hear from them for another month and a half, and we thought, well, I guess they went with General Dynamics or ATK Systems or one of the big multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that they usually go with, not just two guys in their early 20s from Miami Beach. So we kind of figured that we lost and we put it out of our minds. And then one day, Ephraim calls me up and he says to me, he's like, David, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And I say to him, well, what's the bad news? And he says, well, our first task order is only 600K. And I said to him, what, we won the contract? And he's like, fuck yeah, we won the contract. I'm coming to pick you up. We're going to celebrate. Are you fucking kidding me? He picked me up. We went to an Italian restaurant. We were talking over dinner, over wine, over champagne. We were a little bit nervous because they were only legally required to give us the first task order. When they give you a big contract, they split that contract into a bunch of mini orders, and they're only legally required to give you the first one. And we bid on this $300 million contract with the assumption that we'd get everything. So the costs of the logistics of the air freight would be very different if we were doing one aircraft load or 150 aircraft loads. So we realized if they don't give us more than just this first task order, we're kind of screwed. We can't even deliver the first task order and make money on it. We would lose money because the air freight would be so much more expensive. We were worried that they were testing us by giving us just this tiny little first order. But then about a week and a half later, they gave us a $40 million task order. So we realized they were just waiting for the money to come in. We started working on the contract. It was about 30 different items, everything from pistol ammo all the way up to tank rounds and mortars and anti-aircraft rockets. And one of the biggest logistical headaches we knew was going to be to deliver the 7.62 by 39 ammo. That's the ammunition that is used in the AK-47. And the best price that we got for this ammunition was out of Albania through a Swiss arms dealer that we had a connection with, a guy named Henry. He's played by Bradley Cooper in the movie. The problem was that at the time, in early 2007, there was an enormous spike in oil prices, and our air freight, which is 80% of the price, is dependent on the cost of fuel, had shot up significantly. And because of this increase in oil prices, we couldn't deliver on this ammunition profitably. So I had the idea to reduce the weight of the ammunition by removing the metal tins of the ammunition from the heavy wooden crates that they were packaged in. But we didn't trust the Albanians to give us accurate numbers, so we decided to send one of our friends, a guy named Alex, to Albania to inspect the ammunition, make sure it was good, and to weigh the crates to make sure that to get an accurate number on how much the crates weighed so we could calculate how much the shipping would be. Alex goes to Albania, he inspects the ammunition, and he calls me up and he tells me, you know, this is how much the crates weighed. Turned out that the crates were very heavy, so if we remove the crates, we could become profitable again on this ammunition. But he said, but you do know that this ammunition is Chinese, right? And I said, what are you talking about? It's Albanian ammunition. And he's like, no, there's Chinese markings all over the crates, on the metal tins. There's even Chinese documentation inside the metal tins with the ammunition. So this is definitely Chinese ammunition. And we realized that this was a problem because our contract specifically said no Chinese ammunition could be delivered under this contract, either directly or indirectly.
There's Chinese writing on every fucking crate. Trust me, it's Chinese.
And the reason it said that is because in 1989, there was a arms embargo placed on China by the United States after the Tiananmen Square massacre, where the Chinese government suppressed a pro-democracy movement by university students by killing a lot of them. And the United States and the West put China under an arms embargo as punishment for that. So it's illegal for US companies or citizens to buy or sell military equipment with the Chinese government. And that's why it said in our contract that no Chinese ammunition could be delivered under this contract. However, this ammunition was given to Albania by China in the 1970s, before there was an arms embargo. So technically this ammunition did not violate the arms embargo because it was exported before it was illegal. However, our contract didn't mention the embargo. It just said no Chinese munitions directly or indirectly, period. So we thought, well, we could ask the Army for an exemption. We could tell them what's going on. But we thought, well, they could give us an exemption, or maybe they could say something like, well, it's not really fair that you can get to deliver this ammunition because all your competitors bid on this contract with the requirement that no Chinese ammunition, period, could be delivered under this contract. So we're going to take this $300 million contract away from you and put it out for open bid, and you can bid on it again and bid it right this time. So we didn't want to take the risk of losing a $300 million contract. So we made the fateful decision to hide the fact that it was Chinese from the government and to repackage the ammunition to get rid of the evidence. So we hired a guy named Costa, an Albanian box manufacturer, to provide the manpower and the cardboard boxes, to take the ammunition out of the crates, out of the metal tins, and put it in sealed plastic bags inside thick cardboard boxes so that all evidence of the Chinese munitions would be removed. And we would reduce the weight of the packaging by quite a lot. So Costa started repackaging the ammunition. We started delivering to Afghanistan. The US Army was thrilled. So we were delivering 3 to 4 aircraft loads with 45 tons of munitions on it, each aircraft every week. And the money was rolling in. And then Ephraim decided that he wanted to make a little bit more money on this ammunition. So he had Costa, the box guy, find out from his cousin who worked in the Ministry of Defense how much the Ministry of Defense was paying Henry, who was our contact, the Swiss arms dealer, who set up this deal for us. So Costa finds out that the Ministry of Defense is paying 2 cents a round to Henry, and we were paying Henry 4 cents a round. So Ephraim was furious that Henry is doubling his money, even though we were selling it to the US Army for 10.5 cents a round.
Yeah, so what? We do the same thing.
We were paying around 5 cents in shipping costs, but still, we were making about what Henry was making. But Ephraim wanted to make more. So he decided to go to Albania and try to convince the Albanians to cut Henry out of the deal. Now, the Albanians decided they didn't want to cut Henry out of the deal. In retrospect, probably because Henry was paying off the politicians from his end. But the Albanians made Ephraim an offer. They said, we know you're spending a lot of money on Costa to repackage this ammunition. Why don't you give us that job to repackage the ammunition? And we'll make money from the repackaging job, and then we'll give you a little discount on the ammunition. You know, then it's win-win. Ephraim said, sure, great. That guy's fired, you're hired, let's do this. So the contract was transferred, the other Albanians started doing the repackaging, and then Costa calls me up and he says, look, I know you guys are changing who's doing the repackaging for you, that's fine, but I'm stuck with $20,000 worth of cardboard boxes. Can you at least buy these boxes from me? Because I have nothing to do with them now. I told Ephraim, hey, let's buy the boxes from Costa, and Ephraim tells me, you know, these new guys, they already got their boxes, they don't want to buy his boxes, just forget about him. He's, you know, don't worry about him. I told Ephraim, we should probably just give him the 20 grand just because he's gonna be pretty upset if he doesn't have it, if we just leave him out like that. And Ephraim said, nah, what's he gonna do? He can't do anything, he's not gonna do anything, just forget about him. So Costa got really upset, just as I thought he would. And we found out later, he called up the New York Times and told them about everything we were doing. And he called up the FBI and told them. And they both started investigations. And his big mistake was he called up the Albanian press and he told them that there was corruption in this deal, that the Albanian politicians were getting kickbacks from this deal. And about a week later, Costa winds up dead in a very mysterious car accident in the middle of a field. He had been run over by his own car somehow. Shortly after that, Ephraim comes into my office and pretty much tells me that he doesn't want to pay me the agreed upon rate that we had agreed upon for this contract. I told him to go fuck himself and that I'd see him in court, and I quit AEY. About 6 months later, the New York Times publishes their front page article about us, where they have a picture of rusty looking ammunition, and they said that that's the stuff we were delivering to Afghanistan, and that we were putting our allies' soldiers in danger. And it wasn't true. All the stuff we were delivering was high quality munitions. They got a picture of a small quantity of stuff that had been rejected. It was like 30,000 rounds out of 150 million that had been corroded. But that's the picture the New York Times put on the front page. It created a massive political scandal, and the US Army canceled the contract, and the Justice Department decided to charge us with fraud. They said that we lied about where the munitions came from, that each aircraft had a document that stated that the munitions were from Albania when they were really from China originally, and therefore this document, submitting it to the government, is an act of fraud. We had delivered 71 aircraft loads at this point of these munitions, so that 71 acts of fraud could get us up to 5 years in prison each, so that we were looking at 355 years in prison, unless we pled guilty. Then they can combine 71 into one, and because we pled guilty, so it would be maximum 5 years in prison because it's one count of fraud, and because we plead guilty, they would ask the judge, the prosecutors would ask the judge to go easy on us, so it would be closer to the 1 year mark rather than the 5 year mark. So that was the option we had. It was either get like on the low range, possibly just house arrest or probation, or 355 years in prison. So of course we both pled guilty. I ended up getting sentenced to 7 months of house arrest, and Ephraim probably would have gotten something similar, but he decided that he wanted to continue in the arms business after they told him to stop, and he got entrapped in a ATF undercover sting. They tricked him into picking up a handgun, which he had already pled guilty, so he was officially a convicted felon, and a convicted felon who is in possession of a firearm can get up to 10 years in prison. So he could have gotten 15 years total, but he negotiated down to 4. He ended up serving 3.5 years in prison. The political scandal that was caused by the New York Times got Rolling Stone interested in our story, and they wrote a long article about us, and that was read by the director of the Hangover movies, Todd Phillips, who decided that this was an amazing story and he wanted to make a movie about it. So that's how the film War Dogs came out in 2016. As soon as the film came out in 2016, I started getting people contacting me constantly, asking me to teach them how to do government contracting. But I was banned from doing government contracting for 15 years. So I did not want to have anything to do with it. I started a different company. I started a music technology company called Singular Sound, and a healthcare company called InstaFloss. I thought I would never get back into government contracting again. Then about a year ago, I had a guy named Logan contact me, and he said, I just wanted you to know that my partner James and I, we were 21 years old, dead broke, picking bananas on a farm, and the farm had a movie night, and they showed War Dogs. And we were so inspired that we thought, these guys are our age. If they can do it, why can't we do it? And so they threw themselves into it, and they learned how to do government contracting on their own. Then 6 years later, they now have a multi-million-dollar government contracting business. They're flying all over the world. They ended up specializing in laundry services of all things, not munitions or weapons or anything, because the government buys everything. They literally buy everything because they support millions of people all over the world, in all air bases and army bases all over the world. So they buy laundry services, they buy food, they buy weapons and ammo, they buy clothing, they buy entertainment, they buy everything. So Logan and James just happened to get lucky and win a laundry services contract, and they built on that. They used that as past performance and got bigger and bigger contracts, and now they have a multi-million-dollar government contracting business specializing in laundry services. And so they just contacted me to say thank you for the inspiration. And I thought to myself, I literally have hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people who've contacted me over the years asking me to teach them how to do government contracting. And these guys are currently doing it. I know my information might be a bit outdated because I haven't done it for 15 years. So I told them, hey, why don't we start a business together where we can teach people how to do government contracting. And that's how we started War Dogs Academy. And we built it to give maximum chance of success to all our students. We don't just have an online course. We have an online course which we formatted in digestible modules so that it's easy to learn. We have self-tests to make sure you're absorbing the information. And we have an active community of our students, a forum where people can ask questions of other students and contracting experts. So we hired a retired government contracting officer, Anna, and we are currently looking into hiring additional experts to take the students step by step through the process. So if our students are having trouble with anything, they can ask Anna or our other contracting experts to explain things to them, to review their submissions, their proposals to the government before they submit it to the government, to make sure they have the highest chance of winning the contract that they are working so hard on. And one of the things that we're most excited about is the financing arm of War Dogs Academy, because a big limitation for most people getting into government contracts is that the government only pays you 30 days later, and you usually have to pay the suppliers in advance. So you need the money to finance that, whatever it is that you're buying and selling to the government. So we have a network of investors who finance government contracts. So we put all the pieces in place to make sure that our students have the highest chance of winning and succeeding in government contracting and building long-term businesses. And I'm very happy to say that as of now, just 3 months after we launched War Dogs Academy, we've had more than 25 students win contracts, and they've won a total of almost $500,000 worth of contracts. And this is just the first. It's usually you win small contracts in the beginning and then you build on that to win the multi-million-dollar contracts. So wait, you're telling me the government actually paid you early?
Yeah, a week early. So, that was cool.
That's amazing. I've never heard that actually happen, that they actually pay early. Usually it's late. So it's so gratifying to see that all the work we put into War Dogs Academy is actually yielding results for people in the real world. People are actually making money, winning contracts and building businesses, building security for themselves and for their families. And we're changing lives, and that really couldn't feel better. So if you are interested in learning government contracting, War Dogs Academy is the perfect way to start. Come join us, wardogsacademy.com.